we can put it on. There's people return to the main meeting window. See who's waiting as well. So if you can let people in as well. Now's recording. Brilliant. Thank you. So, hello and welcome again. I haven't spoken to you since the 5th of October, which was quite an important date for me, in the sense that it was 3 weeks after falling off my bike and sustaining quite a severe head injury. Which, yeah, it's one of those things. If you guys come off mute, actually, if you want to say stuff or comment or just have mute off, it's good to kind of chat, right? Because there's no such thing as a silly question. Put your hands up, use the hand up function in Teams, and we can go through questions as we go. The way that I envisage this going is essentially 45 minutes where I'm going to give you this talk about the impact of media and COVID-19, considerations for future medics and the public. And also tie it into things that are relevant for your education, your learning, your medical scholarship, but more importantly, the career that you guys will go off and have, right? And then that will be for 45 minutes. And then after that, I know you've got assessments, I know you've got exams. We don't have to talk a lecture for 45 minutes. If the smaller group want to hang around and afterwards, I've got my diary free for 90 minutes, so I can stay until just before 1. And then we're going to stop the recording, and then any questions, any discussions, any questions and chat about pastoral stuff. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds okay. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, good. I'm glad that that's good. So, same disclaimer as before. I'm incredibly grateful to AstraZeneca for allowing me out and speak and lecture you guys and kind of spend time with you, really. Because it is in the middle of the working day. But I have to put this on all my talks to say that the views herein do not represent any of my employers, whether they be AstraZeneca or anybody else, and they're just my personal views. So that bit's done. There's going to be no prostate sparing saddles in this talk, you'll be pleased to know. There's also going to be no real talk about cycling like my other talk. As you can see, I had to recycle some slides from last time, but I did change them. And also, I can't remember who suggested it in terms of calling this slide the crown jewels. But I did say that I would title it. And I also said that I would make a change to this slide. Who can remember what the other change to this slide is, apart from just changing the title?
Reorganizing the pictures so they actually match.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell me more. Who was that?
Me.
Me.
Yeah.
Okay, me. That's fine. So tell me what that was in terms of how did we reorganize the pictures and why is it important for medical people?
So it's just the perspective. So the first one is like from front, and the other one's like from the side.
Yeah.
And the pictures in the bottom were switched, so it didn't really make sense.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And from a clinical perspective, that's important, is because you need to see in X-rays and radiology, to get an idea of something, you need to see two views, because we look at things. An X-ray is a 2D representation of a 3D structure. So to have two views, one on the side, which is called lateral, which is the one over here, and one front to back, which is called AP or anterior posterior, by having two views, what does that allow us to infer?
Accurate positioning of.
Yeah, brilliant. Accurate positioning. I was going to say something different, but that's a much better and a much concise way of saying it. So yeah, it's something about a 3D representation of a 2D using 2D images, right? Brilliant. That's very good. So that was that. Who feels like this in terms of at medical school at the moment, trying to take a drink from this and the water is representing the knowledge that is being thrown at you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 so far. I mean, put in the chat, right? Yes and no, or that's not recorded. Just have a chat going on as we're talking, right? Just chat. And if you're in lectures, you'd be kind of talking to each other in the lecture theatre and stuff. It'd be really nice to know what just sense check in the virtual room, right? We've got 2 people feeling like this, and the reason that this is important is because it's going to shape the rest of my talk in terms of the way that I approach it, and it will really help me to know.
Probably say yeah as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay. So
Yeah,
is
me
it fair
too.
to okay, so is it general consensus opinion? Is it fair to say that people can feel it's fair to say that you're overwhelmed by the amount of knowledge that is being thrown at you?
That sounds fair.
Okay, cool. So my old medical school, no, not medical school professor, my old medical education professor, Professor Reg Denick, and I only came into contact with him when I was 27 years old, said to me, being a medical student is like, and I was doing medical education masters at that point, he said to me, being a medical student is like trying to be asked to take a sip from a fire hydrant that's chucking water at you, and that water is knowledge, right? So it's a very common thing. And if I said to you that if I said to you that I felt the same at medical school, would you believe me?
Yeah, I believe you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Because I did feel the same at medical school because of various reasons. But it was only when I was 27 and I was doing medical education masters that I actually learned how to learn. Can you believe that? Do you guys know how to learn or how you learn? It sounds like a really silly question.
Still
but I
figuring
think
it
it's
out.
important.
Yeah, same. I agree with Sarah. Like, I don't think I've still found an optimum way to sort of like study effectively.
Yeah, because like it's easy to know ways of studying, but like to know which way that, you know, I don't know, that really, because you can have ways that you like, but the things that you like may not be the best.
Yeah, I agree.
That's really important. And as you progress through your medical career and year 1, year 2, year 6, FY1, FY2, whatever, right? What you guys all need to remember is that you never kid yourselves in terms of spending lots and lots of time revising something that is enjoyable. For instance, asthma. I loved asthma as a medical student because I found it easy and I knew it. So I'd spend hours and hours learning about stuff that I knew, right? So one of the things that's useful to think about in your mind, and I couldn't find images of this, so maybe I'll do it next time, is you need to get some nails, not literally, but metaphorically, and nail them into your wall, right? And then what you need to do is you need to chuck spaghetti so that they start sticking on some of those nails, because that is, there's an educational theory called constructivism, and the better way that constructivism is explained is that it's old knowledge that forms a foundation and then new knowledge is layered on top of it, right? Now, when I was a medical student, I had no idea about learning theories or how to learn or how to study. And I was just scrabbling around hoping that some spaghetti would stick on some of the nails. Therefore, I was very unorganized in my approach to education and life, really. And what that meant was I had to sacrifice lots of things to survive in medical school. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that that is a good suggestion. So if I went back to 2004 and I had a time machine and a retrospectoscope, firstly, obviously this is a song that reminds me of, because in September 2004, Call on Me was released and it was #1 in the charts for the period of time that I made a big change, just like you've made, and you've gone to Hull York Medical School. Some of you are at home, but you know, you're still at university and you're training to become doctors. And this is my first point about learning, right? So I can remember doing my the Core's Breathless soundtrack in terms of my IT project. I would just listen to that on loop, and music would really help me be better. I've got some books hidden away. One is How Music Works, which I'm just going to drop all my stuff, which is unfortunate. But anyway, so, you know, people can use music to medicate themselves in terms of, if I went through school now, I think it would be highly likely that I would be diagnosed probably with ADHD in addition to dyslexia. But by listening to music, I was reaching out to music when I was 15 years old, doing my GCSEs, studying for GCSEs, IT, right, specifically. And I could find getting myself into a rhythm, learning that IT stuff was really, really helpful. I can still remember, if I listen to that track now, I can still remember that. So do you guys use music at all when you're learning or listening or revising or working out in any way?
No, I usually write
Yeah.
down.
So there was a no, and
You go
someone
first.
said yes.
You go first.
I said I usually write down the lyrics. I can't. Memory is just there is a conflict between the two.
Okay. So
I can't listen to lyrics either. I have to listen to like instrumentals or game music or original soundtracks from movies.
Yeah.
Nothing is
Classical is like
Classical.
my
Yes.
go-to generally.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or even
Okay.
at least a different language, like.
Yeah, the ones I cannot write
I've done
down.
that as well. Different language. If I don't understand it, then like I don't pay attention to the words. But if it's like in English, and I just distract myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. So this is another one that I bought when I was in San Francisco. I was very lucky to be sent out there by AstraZeneca. I would never have afforded to be able to go to America without it. And I bought this little book called How Music Can Make You Better. And on the back of it, it says, you love music. It's so much more than a pastime or a pleasure. Learn how your mind transforms a collection of sounds into a powerful human experience. One that connects us, heals us, and changes us for the better, right? A bit hippy-dippy at the end, but there is neurological basis behind this in terms of how music can improve your performance and help memory. And it's interesting how it depends what task I'm doing as to whether I want to listen to music, right? The beginning of this lecture or before we started, I just had some stuff on in the background, wasn't really listening to it. It was in the background, I was chatting to you. Now I'm concentrating on this. I'm super sensitive to any noise around me, whether it be outside, my phone's going off, so they're switched off. And we need to think about the environment that we create for ourselves when we are studying and learning. So what would I do in my first term and year of medical school? What would I do differently? How would I deal with stress? I don't think I was particularly efficient at dealing with stress. Developing my study skills, as I've already said, I didn't know how to learn. I was the human photocopier of just copying out stuff ad infinitum, right? Verbatim. And that is a passive learning style. I've still got loads of notes in storage in Lincoln because I don't want to get rid of them, but I would literally just copy stuff out. The other stuff that I would do, right, believe it or not, is this is like there's either Kumar and Clark or Davidson's. These are weighty tomes, right? And these I would literally try and read like a book. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I just had no idea how to learn. I was all right for GCSEs. I worked hard. I got me through. Worked hard for A levels. Got through. It was fine. But then I don't know how many pages this is actually, but this is 1,369 pages. So
that's a thick book.
It is quite thick, yeah. And I was made to feel thick as a medical student, right? Because I was sitting there, not understanding, looking at this. This is completely intelligible. I don't know if that's the right word, but incomprehensible for me now in terms of big blocks of text. The only way that I've changed now is I will skim it, and I realise and I've learned that I've got photographic memory for pictures. I wish I knew that at medical school. I couldn't draw, and people are very artistic and very great at drawing, many medics, but I couldn't draw for toffee, right? So it shouldn't surprise you that if I was trying to read this like a book and copying it out, I'd only get to about that much. And then it's a bit of a gamble as to if my exams covered this, happy days, I'm winning. If my exams covered this, it's a bit of a risk as to whether I'd pass, right? And
that hit home.
Sorry?
That last point hit home.
In what way?
Like when you work hard and you revise like one bit, like but you've like revised it like ineffectively, so you've had to put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't come up and you're like, wow.
Disappointing, isn't it?
Definitely.
And I tell you what, right? Medics are all highly achieving, highly capable, highly competent. And then we put you all in a room and get you to compete. And then we create doctors that, you know, I genuinely believe that if somebody had 3 Bs at A level or even 3 Cs, but they genuinely wanted to do medicine, they had that fire inside, they had that motivation, they will make far better doctors in the long run. Because
I agree with that point. I've always said that.
Okay. How come? Why have you said that?
Because I feel like it might sound a bit stereotypical, but like people who get A stars in all these mathsy, sciencey subjects may as well like bury their head in textbooks. But do they have the social skills alongside it to like do medicine?
Often not. No.
Yeah.
Exactly. And people who do have C's in like chemistry or whatever, like they might not know the ins and outs like as well as that person. However, I think they'd make much better doctors because at the end of the day, if you actually go into the profession, are you gonna be telling them about, I don't know, Le Chatelier's principle? No, that's not gonna be the case. So
No,
that's
good.
why I think that.
And someone's raised
I
their hand.
agree.
I think like just from personal experience, because I feel like with medicine you've got that goal, you're like learning this for this goal, whereas A levels you're learning it to get to learning your goal, if you get what I mean. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
from personal experience, like biology and stuff, some of the things I just didn't understand because I wasn't passionate about it, but like I recapped it here like in on this course and I'm like, oh my god, I get it now, because actually you link it to like, I feel like when you link knowledge to real life scenarios, so like clinical scenarios, it just clicks way more than if you just learn the mark scheme for AQA papers.
100%. And other exam boards are available. I have to say that's my limited experience of the BBC that we have to say stuff like that. But, right, other broadcasters are available as well, I'd hasten to add. But what I'd say is because you guys are all bright, and many medical students are bright, you can persist with inefficient learning styles because basically the exam environment that you're put in was where you could copy out the syllabus a million times and it's just brute force getting it into your head, right?
Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. That is exactly it.
I think A levels are a memory test because A levels are a mark scheme, whereas your course, whatever you're learning, is knowledge, not
So-
memory.
Yes, because you can literally memorize. You can do like some practice papers,
Yeah.
learn how you're supposed to say something, and then you'll be fine. But then, like, if you were gonna practice that information, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Like
Yeah.
you for biology, you got the right answer, but it wasn't on the mark scheme, so you didn't get the right answer.
100%. And medicine is not like that, right? Sorry, somebody new going to say something though.
No, I was literally just agreeing with these two. I mean, like, I feel like it's just stepping stones to get to medicine. I feel like the only reason why the things are so high is because, you know, it's such a competitive course.
Listen, it's so high because of this, right? And it's basically the around the oh, you're clever. You've got 3 A stars. You need to be clever to do medicine. Why don't you go and do medicine? And then that translates into this highly competitive environment where people don't work together and they're constantly narrow focused. And then they get to a point where suddenly they've got to actually communicate and articulate that with real people, with real patients, with real problems, right? So I think what you will find is this year will actually be a massive advantage for you all because it gives you a little bit of time to develop and learn and see how you learn, and that's stuff that I will guide you with. And somebody new, I think, has raised their hand. I don't know who it is. What somebody wants to come in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because you know how you said like if you get A stars and that you push for medicine, I think in some cases getting lower grades and like doing foundation years or gateways is sometimes a little bit more beneficial because I feel like you push yourself harder because you feel like you have to achieve what they have. When
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That comes into this bit though, right? You need to be careful that you don't push yourself hard to the point of burnout, because there's a couple. I'll make a bit of progress in terms of what we need to do. Is we need to minimize procrastination. In my day, Netflix didn't exist; it was DVDs. But I can remember at the end of the day, I would watch a box set or start watching, I don't know, Friends or Frasier or various things. And like my mate Jack said to me, Kish, what do you mean? So in 2004 and 5 and no, sorry, 5, 6 and 7, when my little brother was at Leicester as well, and we were watching Friends, right? And that was just when it finished in 2004. And I said to my mate Jack, Jack, have you seen Friends? This is amazing. He goes, yeah, Kish, where have you been for the last decade? I go, oh, yeah, I was just studying. I was just trying to get into med school. So what you need to be really careful about is that it doesn't become a perpetual rat race of academic oh, it's just the next thing, oh, it's the next exam, it's the next exam. Because otherwise, what will happen is you'll just burn yourselves out and you won't love medicine. And if that's the case, what kind of care can you give people, right?
Right.
Absolutely, I agree.
See,
Cool.
that's really hard though to do. Like, it's easier said than done. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
know whether it's just me personally, but I'm like obsessed with work. So like,
I know.
just like 10 minutes free is so guilt tripping.
So that's great that you're obsessed with work and you're dedicated and you're motivated. Think about the language that you use, right? One person's obsession is another person's enjoyment, motivation, dedication. You know, you've heard about this 10,000 hours theory, that if you become world class at something, you've got to put 10,000 hours in to become expert and elite and world class, right? So just when people get to the point of, I don't know, they're a gold medal athlete and they're the best in the world, nobody says, oh, you're obsessed to get to that point, right? It's seen as a celebration. So you're just on that journey and you're on that point. The change in mindset comes about how do you protect yourself so you don't burn out? And because you're all young, it's easy at the moment. You can be very inefficient in your sleep, in your exercise, in your nutrition, and you will compensate because your physiology has that capacity and that spare reserve, right? So going back to the book and the revising and the gambling, I knew that it sounds like I was terrible, like gambling at medical school. I wasn't. I was just gambling in terms of what was coming on the exams, because I knew a combination of my inability to deal with stress and study skills meant that I drew a line and I said, right, I know learning at this point, I'm never, ever, ever going to learn this. I just can't do it. So I'm just going to take the view that I hope it doesn't come out up in the exam. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you take that approach. I'm just sharing that was the approach that I had to take to survive as an undiagnosed dyslexic at medical school, right? So the other stuff you need to do is personal development, learning to chill out. I'm terrible for it, but I would say that I'm a workaholic in terms of I love work rather than a workaholic, which is I hate being chained to my desk and working, right? The other thing that I really missed out on and I didn't do as a result of the stuff that we've talked about is a failure to build networks and make friends at medical school. It sounds sad, it sounds tragic, right? But because I didn't socialize, because I didn't do other stuff, because I was focused and wanting to survive medical school, I was so happy to be there. I'm only in contact with, I don't know, a handful of people at medical school or from medical school, right? Holly, who's in my group, who's also dyslexic, she's now a GP. Hardy, who is now a plastic surgeon in Australia, and Greg, and he came into medical school aged 37 years old, and he was like my mate in my group. So people were joking about, oh, he's 37, you're 18, and you got a mate who's 37 years old. But he helped me, he supported me, and he wanted to take, again, the longer course, not the condensed graduate course, but he came on the undergraduate 5-year course, right? So the other thing that I'd say is I don't think I really introduced myself to you guys, and I apologize for that in terms of firstly for this talk, but also the other one, right? So I think it's useful for you guys to understand the things that I've done in my career so far. And I think it's also important to say that, you know, you could look at my LinkedIn profile and you could think, oh, that's great. You know, nobody would ever know all the stuff on the other slide in terms of all the difficulties that I had at medical school, I say failure, and I think it's fine. I think it's fine to fail as long as you fail fast and you learn from it and move on. And I don't mind saying that I failed the member of Royal College of Surgeons exam 7 times because I just couldn't do it. I could not do the MCQs. I couldn't revise. I couldn't understand. So everybody, I think, will get found out at some point at medical school or their postgraduate career if they persist with inefficient learning styles, right? And my point was in 2007, where I almost got kicked out and I had to take a qualifier exam. So Vicky, another friend that I'm in touch with, incredibly grateful that she helped me and supported me. And she condensed 2.5 years worth of work into 2.5 folders that I've still got that hold a very special place in my storage cabinet in Lincoln, because those 2.5 folders were what got me through. And I spent 2.5 years at medical school doing thousands of pages of stuff that were illegible, meaningless, useless. you know, the best thing that they could be used is for fire paper, right? So I think it's important. So I've always been keen to improve patient care by numerous routes, both internal and external to the NHS. And I've also taken an entrepreneurial, creative and innovative approach to medical communications. And what that's meant is that I sort of have 5 domains to my career at the moment. Well, retail, Specsavers is not a domain anymore. I don't do that. But I worked at Specsavers when I was 15 years old as my GCSE experience. They gave me a job after that. And I worked there every Saturday and every Saturday or Sunday and holidays throughout GCSEs, A-levels and the first 4 years of medical school. So that by the time I came out of medical school, age 23, I'd worked for 8 years and I'd honed and developed my communication skills selling glasses to people. That helped when I was a medical student. That also helped when I've been working clinically, both in the NHS and in the Hospital of St John and St Elizabeth. It's obviously helped when I've had the opportunity to go on the media. And it's also shaping the work that I do now within the pharmaceutical industry as well. So the common theme throughout that was dyslexia. Now, during that period, right, during the time that I was a medical student, I had no idea I was dyslexic, and I didn't know how to learn things. I didn't know how to process things, and I was just coping. But coping successfully and finding little hacks, little tricks, little ways to survive, right? So now I'm lucky in the sense that I only got diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 31, and dealing with the stigma of being a dyslexic doctor, I was only able to do it because at that point I felt I'd achieved enough in my career, and I'd got medical education masters and got a distinction in that. So that proved that I was proper doctor because I had a postgraduate medical exam, and then I was studying for my MBA, right, at the time. So I think it's really important to think about how you approach learning of your career. So what I'd like to do in the last little bit of this talk is just run through COVID. And just before I do this, what are your thoughts on COVID and how are you finding it in terms of being a medical student in the middle of a pandemic?
I don't like online things. Well, I prefer face-to-face. Gets a little lonely.
So, okay, so can I ask a question in terms of, I'm not asking you to turn cameras on, but then my question then is, if people think that and they think it's lonely, what's the reticence or the reasons about not wanting to put cameras on? Is it, I don't know, I'd just be really interested to know. And you might know.
You can see
It's not quite the same.
It's what?
It's just not quite the same. Like when you're in person, you can have a proper conversation and your voices will naturally overlap. Like Sarah and I were talking about this the other day.
Literally, yes.
On a camera and like on a video call like this, 2 of you go to talk at the same time and it's a bit of a mess.
But I think
and when you have your cameras on,
yeah,
8 out of 10 times, I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but if I put my camera on, I'm just staring at myself. I'm not actually looking at other people.
And
I'm literally looking at myself.
All the insecurities come out. Oh my god, it's like looking at
being recorded, and yeah, it's a no.
Okay, fine. So I mean, so I think that's fascinating to hear, and that's really good feedback. And we need to kind of feed that back to the medical school. And how can we think of systems to improve people not talking over each other? And we've got the hand raise tool, which is good. But I don't want to talk to you for 45 minutes to 90 minutes, everybody on mute, everybody's cameras off, because that's just going to give you a very didactic session where I'm literally just hello, just talking to myself, right? What's the point?
That's true. But like another thing is, like particularly this session, I paid attention like the whole way through. But I feel as if like if I had my camera on for another session, with someone who's not as enthusiastic as everyone speaking and participating, I'd lose interest very quickly. Particularly with being online.
Yeah.
Like every time I have my camera on, I just don't want to be rude and show the lecturer that I'm like staring into space.
So it's a
that's
perception. That's really interesting. Sorry, go on.
But that's also because they're not as interactive and saying, yeah, don't worry, just butt in whenever. They're generally trying to, like, you can't blame them. Like, for example, biology, you can't butt in all the time because obviously people are trying to learn, but obviously, on the other hand, you're also going to lose interest quick. And that's...
Yeah. So I think, listen, it's a period of adjustment, right? And people are learning how to lecture in this environment. People are learning how to learn in this environment. And I'm just fortunate in the sense that I've got a skill set to make it not as good as in person. Obviously, I'd rather be in a room with you and teaching you and learning with you and getting to know you, but at least we can make it engaging, right? So one of the things that I'd suggest is I'm standing up. Okay, so whenever I work, I don't have a standing desk, and literally show you behind the curtain a little bit, right? I'm going to flip the camera around, and I've
Woo, room tour.
Sorry?
Said woo, room tour.
Yeah, room tour, sort of. I mean, there's a salt lamp because of all the electrical equipment. There's the workings of complete drawings of Leonardo da Vinci. Then I've got the slides here, some candles, definitely not a paper fire risk. And then this is my standing desk, right? I've got loads of stacks of paper that I bought when
resourcefulness.
And but because but the important reason being is I know that my day job means that I've got to be engaged, switched on, interactive. And then that also means if I need to, and like you need to do some kind of exercise, bearing in mind it took me 8 weeks to be able to lift these up again, right? You modify your environment to a point where it's positive for you. And if you're sat slumped at your desk, everything in your body, every single cell, every single physiological mechanism is going against you because you're not designed. We are not designed to be sat down. You know that building with the evolutionary picture where suddenly we make progress from a spearman and then somebody becomes slumped. We know that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
So that is what has
the one
been
he's also holding like...
Sorry, go on.
No, don't worry. I was just saying, yeah.
Well, so you said there's also something with holding a phone. Was that what you're going to say?
Yeah, like holding phone or holding junk food.
Brilliant. So why, from a physiological point of view, why do you think people are holding phones or junk food? What's the physiological reason behind that?
Tastes good, entertainment.
Yes. Tastes good, entertainment, very good. What else?
At this point, we have a very fast pace of life in this day and age. And so I feel like fast food and things, people are just taking the easy option.
It's yes. Well, okay. Feel like people are taking the easy option. There's an element to that. But you also need to look at the world in terms of how it's been set up, right? In terms of the capitalist machine where marketing forces people to do stuff, okay, and consume. But then that is based on psychology and the fundamental neurological or neurochemistry in terms of it's exploiting serotonin, dopamine, systems in our brain that help us get pleasure or reward. So we want to make more of it. So people say that people can say, oh, they're lazy or they take the easy option or they're idiots or they're stupid, right? But there are proper biological mechanisms that underline this. And I didn't expect this talk to go anywhere in this direction. So we're going to get it back onto COVID. But maybe next time we talk, we can talk more about biohacking or that kind of thing. So what I was going to do in this talk was talk to you about, I want to try and make it interactive. This is a part of this talk is repurposed for a talk that I've given elsewhere. And I also wanted to talk about politics and COVID. And this is a book by Connie Huck and James Kay that I can highly recommend. It's only $4.99, and it's quite funny. And it's about making fairy tales great again. So these are some common questions that I've had in the past. This will be on the PDF that Paul has that he will send out to you all. And you can click on the links. And so some of the questions I get is, why was the world so unprepared for this pandemic? And this is a link that you can go to and click on coronavirus after the pandemic, which was a Sky News special, where people from the World Health Organization discussed global and UK responses. There's also a bit about why was the UK not prepared? And I would suggest that exercise sickness is an interesting thing for you guys to go and look at. But I would hasten to add, this is if you're interested and you have time and you want to learn about it. This is not going to come up in your exam, and that's why we're not spending time on it. Who has got it right? Countries who dealt with it. And I would really recommend checking out Prof. Devi Sridhar on Twitter. Absolutely amazing, inspirational lady who became a chair or a professor at a crazy young age, and she's all over the media explaining this in a good, useful way. And I think if you click on that link, it'll take you to this interview. Actually, yeah. So I've taken this interview offline, and then she explains who've got it right, who's done it well. Could this happen again? Yes, it could, because there are as many as 1.6 million viruses we know nothing about lurking in mammals and birds. And as many as half of those have the potential to jump into humans and infect us. 6 out of 10 infectious diseases that strike us come from animals, and that list includes HIV, AIDS, Ebola, MERS, and SARS. And in all probability, COVID-19, and that was from the National Geographic. What can we do to mitigate risk? Wash hands, cover face, make space, get a test if you need to. But also, we must keep on protecting each other, both personally and professionally. And that is the theme of this talk. So, I live at home. My mum and my dad, who don't have faces for apples, but I don't have their image rights to share their photos. But my mum's happy for me to talk about her medical history. And her COVID-19 relevant past medical history. She's type 2 diabetic, she's got rheumatoid arthritis, she's on methotrexate, which is immunosuppression, she's about to go on Humira, which is a biologic. There's a lot of autoimmune history, she's Asian, with a slightly increased BMI, but exercising. So what does that mean? If you add all that up, what does that mean for my mum and her risk?
It's a little bit higher for her.
That's very kind. It is a little bit higher. I would say it's significantly higher. There is evidence to suggest that part of this is dependent on your level of control of diabetes. If you have blood sugar levels that are going up and down all over the place, then you're at even higher risk. So when you are seeing patients in the future, one of the questions that you need to think about is what is their level of control? And my mum's diabetes is relatively well controlled, but it has had a bit of a deviation from being well controlled in the current period. And what do you think the reasons are that might be for that in terms of why her diabetes has become less controlled? And also, does anybody know the marker, the blood test that tells us the long-term control over a period of time?
Is it HbA1c?
It is HbA1c, very good, and that's glycosylated hemoglobin, and that lasts, I don't know, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's maybe, is it 90 days? I can't remember.
I remember something saying like 3 or 4 times a year, so that, I don't know.
That's
for 3
good.
months.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's working it out from first principles, right? If somebody said 3 or 4 times a year, 90 to 120 days would work, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So you need to ask about what are the reasons that my mum's diabetes control may have got worse over a COVID-19 pandemic.
She couldn't access she couldn't get that checked out like within those time frames because
Good, yes, 100%. She's lucky in the sense that I take her blood, right? So we get the bloods done. I do that at home. But that's a very good point. Access to medical care, and that we've seen that 90% of people with various problems are not getting medical care, and they're not accessing health services for things that they need to. So that's very good. That's one thing to think about. What are the other reasons in terms of with type 2 diabetes, why being locked down in your house and being written to, I don't know whether it was Matt Hancock or somebody in government who wrote to them saying that you need to shield and stay in your house. What are the other reasons physiologically why people might not do very well in that kind of environment?
If they wanted to go out and like get exercise and stuff like that, they can't.
Good. Exercise was one thing that I heard is going to be harder and they can't. So that's going to be a problem. And the other thing I didn't hear, what was that?
I said exercise as well, just at the same time.
Okay, no worries, that's good. So exercise, right? So leading a sedentary lifestyle doesn't help with diabetes. And that comes back to the standing desk, all that sort of stuff, right? So she has rheumatoid arthritis, sciatic arthritis, but I didn't want to complicate the issue. And I also wanted to talk about rheumatoid arthritis. And it might be helpful to share in terms of a bit of her history, in terms of she kept on having this, the GPs were insistent that she had a ganglion on her wrist. Do you know what a ganglion is?
Is it like a cyst?
It is a cyst. Very good. It is a cyst. And what? It's a cyst of what?
Is it just a fatty
I'm not
deposit?
actually sure.
So
Is it
it's
like
not a
xanthoma?
fatty deposit, but it's a good guess. What?
Is it like a
Somebody else said
xanthoma?
something?
Is it like a xanthoma or something?
Oh, I don't even know what a xanthoma is. What's that?
Is it fluid filled and like near a joint?
100% fluid filled near a joint. Yes, but that's coming towards something else that's beginning with B. Called a bursa. Okay. So a ganglion is a bit like a cyst. It's like a fluid-filled sac, right? The treatment would be you would hit it with a Bible, not a power
No
pack,
way,
but-
seriously.
Sorry?
Did he seriously just whack it?
Historically, yeah, if you look at the history of medicine, it's not the treatment now, you'd probably get it excised, but in the past, they used to whack it with Bibles.
Wowzers.
But,
Yeah,
in the,
TikTok.
sorry, somebody said something. What was that?
I seen someone do it on TikTok and it actually disappeared. Like someone just hit the other person. Like,
On TikTok, that's good. So if you can send me that TikTok video, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I saw that TikTok as well.
yeah, because it was a dermatologist reacting to it, and he was like, "Oh my god, it actually went," because he probably like is trained the proper way to get rid of it.
But if you think about it, right, it's just a fluid-filled kind of, mass, whatever, ganglion, hit it, get rid of it, it would work, right? But the important thing is my mum, they were insistent that it was a ganglion and it was nothing to worry about and it was fine, right? Because of the area in the wrist that her rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis, started presenting, right? So obviously, so she's got psoriasis, autoimmune. The likelihood of having psoriatic arthritis is also possible in the early stage. And she kept on going there, coming back, kept on going there, coming back. It was nothing, it was nothing, it was nothing. Because she was getting pain. It was always in the mornings. Her hands were a bit stiff. She was unwell. And so eventually we got her seen by a rheumatologist who made the diagnosis of psoriatic arthritis. And he put her on methotrexate. And methotrexate is also an anti-cancer drug. And we had to then talk about why she didn't want to go on a cancer drug or get cancer, and she was worried about it, right? But I knew it was essential for her to go on this disease-modifying therapy, or called the DMARDs are a group of medications. It used to be like gold, and methotrexate, I think, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think is classed in this group of medications. Because the reason that it's critical is because it stops people having permanent deformity of their hands like this, right? Permanent deformity of their hands. This is called rheumatoid hands. And we used to, again, the history of medicine, we used to have wards of people that were disabled permanently and in hospital because their hands were so bad they couldn't do anything, right? DMARDs, disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, have revolutionized the care of that, right? So I thought it'd be a good point to talk a little bit about that. And also, if you ever see those in exams, hands like that, that is rheumatoid because of this very distinctive pattern of little fingers going ulnar deviation, Z thumb, nodules, both Heberden's and Bouchard's nodes, right? And it's a symmetrical pattern affecting all the small joints in the hands, all right? So that's a little bit of revision done already, because you'll have this slide, you'll have access to it. If you listen to what we're talking about and what I'm saying in the conversation, you will always remember when you see that now, rheumatoid hands, right? I hope. So as you can imagine, she is high risk. So before the letter came through advising her to shield, she was already in quarantine because I could see what was coming and happening, and I put her in. I didn't have the term shielding, but we got her quarantined. So us now, the Rees family et al., this is what we do. There was a great article in The Independent last night in terms of wiping down groceries. Do we really need to do it? And they basically came to the point that public health and communications is so difficult in terms of telling people what to do and whether they should or they shouldn't. But if you're with somebody with high risk and the relative cost and the inconvenience of wiping some stuff down is not necessarily the end of the world, right? And also, let's not forget, it protects against lots of other diseases. So on this point, I'm just going to ask you, because I can have a drink and also think, but what is the common route of spread for COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, and the disease it causes is COVID-19?
Is it like just droplet?
Yeah, what does that mean, droplet, though?
Like droplets that just come out in the air from like you're speaking or like sneezing or coughing.
Coughing, sneezing, and a little bit of speaking, potentially, yes, as well, 100%. So the wiping down kind of guards against fomite spread, which would mean if I spat or coughed or sneezed all over something and I left viral load there of the virus and then I ingested it, that would be the fomite spread by touching it and then touching my eyes or my mouth or whatever, right? But also the early studies that said about fomite spread were done in laboratory conditions where there was a high viral load. And we know that clinical trials and laboratory conditions are not representative of the real world, right? So that's been part of the problem in terms of the challenge of communicating this. And I've gone on public record and said that I think the scientific communication around COVID-19 has been an absolute shambles. Now, I appreciate the approach that we've outlined on that slide is quite an individualistic approach. But what we need to realize is that SARS-CoV-2 affects people in very different ways. And this is a good tool, the Ottawa Personal Decision Guide, for people making health or social decisions, the kind of questions you should ask, the kind of things that you should think about before you make a decision, right? So the social media world doesn't help in terms of COVID or anything else for that matter, in terms of the whole business model of these companies is to drive people into two polarized camps that war against each other or within each other to drive clickbait advertising revenue. And especially in a pandemic, that can create a lot of white noise. I couldn't find an image for white noise, so I landed on this for static. So that results in a situation where there's lots of people out there that are not okay. Okay, the impact, as we've already said, that these tools, technologies have on people's neurochemistry can have an impact on people's mental health. So the first thing that I'd say is it's okay not to be okay, always, and reach out, get help, talk to the people, and use the processes at medical school if you are struggling, because medical school is difficult, right? Forget about the fact that it's in a pandemic. Medical school is difficult, so it is okay not to be okay, and it's also fine to reach out to any of your lecturers, any of the support services if you need to. I think that's really important, because we're essentially being played, right? So Facebook, for instance, some of the stuff that they've done, I've got a great book over there called Zucked, which is by Roger McNamee, and he used to work for Facebook, and he's written a bit of an expose in terms of what the workings were, right? Facebook is designed, and all these other, it's not just Facebook, it's all of them. They're all designed to hack and channel into our dopamine pathways so that we're hyper addicted to these devices. And this is why it comes back into the procrastination and the importance of using the tools. I'm not anti-technology, far from it. I love it, right? Technology has been the great leveler for me in terms of my development, my learning, and I couldn't do what I do without tech, but I don't want to be a slave to it. And in that regard, this is a great book, which is by Cal Newport, which is about digital minimalism and on living better with less technology, because ultimately the devices that we have are as addictive, if not more so, than crack cocaine. Quite a big claim there. I'd be happy to be challenged on that. If somebody can say it's not as addictive as crack cocaine, let me know. But whether it is or it isn't, I think it is worth investing time in digital detoxes and not being glued to these devices. And, you know, we're going to finish. I'm going over a little bit for what I said in terms of, because we've had a lot of interaction. And I said it'd be 45 minutes. We're wrapping up now. After this, I'm still going to hang around. I've timetabled the time. I'd love to chat to you, get to know you and talk. And we'll stop the recording at that point. But equally, if you just want to go for a little wander and get some fresh air, don't feel guilty that you're not chained and enslaved to your machine or device. See it as an investment in yourself that when you come back to it, you'll be way better. This is something else in terms of a good resource that you can look at from the World Health Organization. Dr. Phil Hammond, I really rate, and he's a very good friend of mine. I don't think he'll mind me saying that he's a disruptive doctor. He's a bit of a kindred spirit in that regard. Dr. Phil's COVID-19 fetish clangers, I also thought was quite funny. In terms of to control the virus without widespread collateral damage, you need everybody to do the basics of hands, face, space. You need to install good ventilation in high-risk superspread environments, and you need the full fetish, which is find, explain, test, trace, isolate, support, and home visit. Also, don't forget your fetish clangers. Oh my goodness, fetish clangers, or just even clangers, where this is basically about connecting, learning, being active, noticing, giving back, eating well, relaxing, and sleeping. You need to do your daily clangers every day to survive medical school and COVID and life and various other stuff. I forgot to share the sound on this audio. So rather than me playing a video to you of Nigel Pearson talking about how he was underwhelmed by a lack of political leadership, the reason that I say this is important for you to look to people and leaders outside of the political sphere, because when I first heard Boris stand up at number 10 and say, I just need to get used to the idea of losing loved ones and he didn't say burying my colleagues early, but also he said, we need to get used to losing loved ones early. And also then some other medical leaders supposedly came out and said, yeah, we just need to get used to the idea of burying our colleagues. I accepted it. I was so shocked by that emotional sucker punch that I then accepted the herd immunity argument, which was not really the case. It was only when Nigel Pearson came out and said that he was totally underwhelmed by the lack of political leadership in one of the first press conferences that I reappraised and re-examined what was presented to me. This is getting really political now, and I'm not going to spend time on these slides massively, unless you've got comments, in which case we can. But what I'd say is two world leaders, there's two precarious parallels here, because these leaders have actions who have very real consequences. So when the outgoing president of the United States says, I see that the disinfectant knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do like that, something inside, like some kind of cleansing by injection inside or something? That has very real consequences because people lost their lives as a result of it. And I don't want to be accused of any political bias. It's not as if we're perfect in the UK, far from it. Because when Boris was saying on This Morning in March 2020, let's just go and take it on the chin, it was his Churchillian moment in terms of like fight them on the beaches or whatever. Let's just take it on the chin and let this move through the population. The World Health Organization is saying at the very same time that herd immunity approach to a pandemic is wholly unethical. It is unreasonable to allow a novel pathogen to spread through the community to see what effect it has. So just be aware and look at lots of different sources and critically appraise them. And you think, what do I think about that? You guys are the future. You are the future of medicine, and you are going to have patients coming to you saying, oh, I just saw on This Morning. In 10, 15 years' time, somebody's going to come to you and say, I just saw the PM on This Morning saying I need to do this about my health. They might not even talk to you about it. They might just accept it. But for you to be good doctors, you need to know what's happening in the external environment and modulate your interactions with your patients, because you will have the greatest impact on their care if you can do that. And none of this is in the exam. But if you want to be good doctors, which is what my lectures are going to be about with you, I would really suggest it. There's some more tweets there from World Health Organization. The other thing I'd say is the Trump brush with COVID when he was sick for 3 days. We've seen the hold on, I getting a call. I've got to go in a second, give some keys, but I'll be right back. Sorry. So we've seen fake news. Are we now seeing the seeds of anti-science, right? And I'll just leave that there for you to think about and reflect on. This has got a bit heavy. Sorry about that. This slide is even more heavy. But
No, it's good.
Okay, thanks. I would suggest you watch this. This is Professor Tesdal Neely of the Harvard Business School and Ken Fraser, who's the CEO of Merck, which is a pharmaceutical company in the UK. Sorry, not in the UK, in the US. And if you click on this link here, in terms of mixing, you will get this interview, which is Ken Fraser and Tesdal Neely, Professor Neely, talking about a whole world of issues: Black Lives Matter, vaccination, trust in politics and medicine, and loads of stuff. Way more stuff than I can go into now, and I can't articulate. It's only half an hour, but I think it'll be interesting for you to look at. So this is embedded for you to look at. Coming to the end of this talk now, the path ahead is uncertain. There's going to be twists and turns each way. We don't know what's coming next. We need to build you, the next generation, to be resilient and adaptive and able to cope in such an uncertain world. So think positive. I know it's difficult to, but try as much as you can. Look after and control the things you can, i.e. meditation, rest, sleep, nutrition, exercise, and utilize the training that you are getting right at the beginning of, i.e. the great art that medicine is, right? So I'm just getting a call. I need to hang up that call. Give me 1 second. Okay, the great art that medicine is, right? You need to utilize those skills and deploy them to the best that you can for society, who have invested a great deal of money in you. I can guarantee my cat's appearance, so I put these in again. Try not to be like this, run ragged, not very healthy. Be like this, where Adobe, when I made this PDF, they captioned this, auto-captioned it, dog in a basket. So if you can be more dog, you'll remember that's an O2 advert from years ago. That would be good. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a great hour. And those are my contact details. As ever, some of you have contacted me on LinkedIn and spoken. None of you have WhatsApped me. Some of you might have emailed me, but I have a bit of a problem with unread emails. Sorry, go on.
I sent you the video of the dermatologist.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Where did you send it?
I sent on WhatsApp.
Okay, I'll have a look at it now. And then next steps are moving forward from last time with these. You may not look at some of them, that's fine. They're not massively relevant to your exams, apart from the 3D anatomy apps, and also then use it for the anatomy and physiology of the bladder. So, Naz, if you do me a favour, please, if you could hit the recording and stop that, that'd be amazing. And then I'm going to stop sharing.